Clubhouse.
Welcome back to Escaping Gilead. This is the second episode of the first season of The Testaments. This is Paul.
This is Caroline.
This episode is called Perfect Teeth.
Man, I felt like we jumped in with 2 feet on this episode. If the first one was sort of world building and just sort of like a little bit getting us back to being acquainted, of course, with still torture scenes, like we can't not have those.
Natch.
But this felt like next level. Like we were going way deeper into the insidious nature of this society.
Right. I mean, in comparison to The Handmaid's Tale, we saw wives and we saw girls that have been already married as wives, but we never saw like that process of transitioning to womanhood in Gilead.
Right. And we knew that it was not going to be nice and cool and great. Like there was going to be, there's always this edginess of violence and predatory behavior and all this stuff like that. That's just always a part of what's going on in Gilead. But I'll tell you, Paul, this one was much harder to watch than first one for me. This got into all the psychological nightmares, all of the stuff, all the subtle stuff that really just makes your stomach feel queasy. It had it all in this episode. It was making me feel horrible. I think I asked you to turn the volume down several times because I just can't take screaming, and some of the stuff is just, it's a lot, you guys. So generally speaking, now that we're 2 episodes in, how are you feeling about the series so far?
I'm interested. This one was very coming of age from a girl's point of view centric, and that may be what a lot of the first season or the whole show depends on. We'll see. That's not a perspective that I know firsthand, so it's.
But you are a dad, and you have 2 daughters.
I do.
And you are a husband, and so you have been around women your whole life. I think it's kind of a misnomer that women are more comfortable talking about periods than men are. I think it has to do with a lot of things, your upbringing, and even just your own, how comfortable you are about sort of speaking about your own body and that type of thing. So I'm going to come forward right away and say, like, it's still uncomfortable for me to talk about these women getting their periods. It's not something that I'm like, oh, I'm super comfortable discussing this. It's difficult. And I think for me, it's like one of those things that I feel like we have to talk about how much this changed the entire game for a Plum, like the second that this all happens. But at the same time, like I cannot act like I'm more comfortable than you are discussing this, because I'm not.
going to act that way because you have at least the experience and.
Yeah, but not this. I mean, this is bonkers. Like this is not
true.
What we go through.
Well, that's kind of the first topic, right?
Yeah, let's get into that, Paul.
Okay.
So I was wondering in the previous episode if Agnes was going to be forthright about the fact that she got her period. It seemed like maybe the way that the first episode ended, there was a little bit of like maybe she was going to try to hide it. Like maybe she was, even when this episode started, when she was kind of walking around the house and she kind of realized like no one was awake and no one was around, I had like a pause. Like, is she going to try to dispose of her underwear or do something in a way that tries to hide this fact? Because I really couldn't gauge her feelings on this. And boy, is that a theme of this episode, trying to gauge everyone's feelings on this event.
I think it's fair to say that Agnes was conflicted, at least. It seemed to me that hiding it was her first thought.
It did seem that way, right? Like, especially when she was walking around the house and nobody was responding to her. And she kind of had that realization of like, I'm actually like alone here for a minute. And like, I actually probably could hide this if I wanted to. That's why I was feeling her conflicted moment of like, wait a minute, like, I don't actually have to tell anybody.
Well, and we can weigh that with her behavior over the rest of the episode. And she is sort of up and down.
Everyone feels up and down about this. Everyone, every single person that is involved feels like there's this sort of like, I'm happy for you, but I'm also pretty wigged out for you. And there's things that you don't know and I can't tell you. You're going to have to like live through it. But I kind of am going to imply, like, let's start off with Paula, right? Because she's sort of the first one who we get that vibe of yes, excited, sort of, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also like immediately asks if she's lying. Like, is she fibbing about this? Which weird to me.
Well, they don't have a great relationship.
They don't. And I wonder if there's any reason to believe, like, does Agnes have any history with Paula about lying about things or fibbing or anything? I mean, to me, everything we've seen is that, you know, Agnes is a pretty disciplined, going with the rules kind of girl.
But we've also seen her be a smart mouth within the
I guess that's
constraints of the things she's allowed to say.
I guess that's very true. So Paula tries to give her this sort of woman talk about, you know, here are the supplies, here's what you're going to do. There's a couple little nuggets we get in there. We get that her mother, I'm going to call her sort of her first Gilead mom, right? Because we all know that June is actually Agnes's mom, but her first Gilead mom has passed away, and she has apparently embroidered this cover for her pad to be able to give to her, like sort of in like this passage of womanhood, which I thought was very sweet, actually. I thought it was very kind of Paula to not discard that or in any way keep that from her, because stepmoms are kind of known for that kind of business when it comes to storytelling.
They do have a bad reputation for that kind of thing.
They certainly do. And I also thought it was interesting to actually have that like flashback where we saw the interaction and how loving and caring her first Gilead mom was.
Tabitha.
Yes.
The scene where Paula gives her the pads and it turns out that I guess Gilead has gone green and they are not into disposable type stuff. Was any of that? I don't know what. I mean, I don't know what I imagine when I think of a woman passing on knowledge to a younger woman about this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Seemed kind of formal.
Well, I don't think that Paula has a very loving relationship with Agnes. So she was seemingly being dutiful about like, I'm supposed to pass on. It's like she used some verbiage like, you know, it's like a woman's duty to pass on the wisdom to, you know, to the next generation kind of thing. And so I felt like she was sort of performing her duty, but it was performative. Like she wasn't necessarily doing it lovingly or like with all this encouragement or caring or anything. But we got a little nugget about Paula because she was like, not that anybody did this for me. And that, you know, made me take pause and be like, oh, okay, we're starting to get a little bit of character building for Paula. Apparently, Paula did not have anybody, or if she had a woman in her life or something, she was not a caring woman. She was not somebody who you could trust to go to about your first period or something like that. Or maybe she grew up in like an orphanage or something like that and didn't have parents or something like that. There's something about Paula there that was a little extra edgy and a little nugget of like, okay, so Paula maybe had a rougher upbringing, which is very apparent, I think, by her behavior. To your comment about the disposable versus reusable supplies of any sort, really, it's actually becoming much more popular these days for women to sort of get away from using necessarily disposable items. Like it's very popular now to use like period underwear, which, you know, you can rewash and reuse. There's women who absolutely make their own pads and reuse them and stuff. There's a lot of chemicals that are in different supplies that women use that are coming out. Like, I don't know if you know this, Paul, but it took until 2023 before they tested any period products with actual menstruation blood. 2023. And the impact, I mean, I know for a fact that there are companies that are being sued because the tampons have chemicals in them that are poisonous to women, are toxic in different ways. There's a lot of sort of looking for other alternatives. People are using things like a Diva cup, which is something that you insert and is, again, reusable, because people are kind of shying away from wanting to use things that could have toxic materials in them. So I didn't think that this was outrageous at all. And I do feel like they established very well in Handmaid's Tale that there was sort of more of this like homeopathic / also I'm going to go with like manufacturing / supply issues. They wouldn't necessarily have like a factory that's making something like this. And they wouldn't necessarily... the men wouldn't necessarily feel a need to create like a supply chain for something like this when they'd be like, can't you just make it yourself? You know, can't you
The
just figure it out yourself?
the book does a little bit more to fill out the world to reinforce that Gilead does not have complete control over the former lower 48 of the United States. We knew from The Handmaid's Tale that like the area down by Georgia had suffered some sort of nuclear situation where they were manually cleaning it up for some way. You know, the colonies is what I'm talking about.
Sure.
But in the book, it does spell out that Texas naturally became its own thing when Gilead did its thing with the sons of Jacob. And so did California. And so you take away those things and then you kind of put some other mountain areas, Midwestern areas in dispute. And so they've got, you know, the 13 colonies plus a little more as terms in terms of like what they've got. But they've sacrificed quite a bit of manufacturing capability with what they don't have control over.
So again, that makes sense. And again, you guys obviously, well, I'm going to put in context Paul's Texas comment because we are both Texans. So he's not being disparaging. He's saying we understand the independent nature of Texans. We
Nearly
certainly...
every near-term apocalypse book I've ever read assumes that Texas becomes its own country.
Isn't that funny?
Every single
Well,
one.
we were, so, you know. Okay, here's the other thing I want to mention. Again, putting some context to my comments about like supplies and stuff. What I'm speaking of is very Western things. Many, many countries have always used like a cotton material or something like that. And through the eons, women have used those types of materials that are, again, reusable and more like fabric that would be friendlier to your skin, friendlier to your body.
All right. So it fits the world.
From go, I felt like Paula was starting to set the tone, though, about this sort of yin and yang of this moment. That at sometimes people seem very happy and celebratory, and other times there's this reticence. There's these micro emotions on their faces where I just feel like they were making these somewhere between worry or upset or even resentment or even, I don't know, just all kinds of other emotions that were not celebratory.
Well, if we can get to the title of the piece, Perfect Teeth, and how like the bulk of this thing is not about teeth. There's only a small amount about teeth.
Right.
But it is what Caroline just said. It's like that. It's like this stage is both a wonderful transition into womanhood, but it's also, for lack of a cleaner term, taking an animal to the auction, right? And something like their teeth
right.
is one of the top things assessed.
I think like if I think, you know, you're talking about like something like a racehorse, right? Like one of the things that they do is they check their teeth, right?
Cattle. And
certainly we know through like slavery and those types of auctions that those types of things were also looked at because your teeth are indicative of your overall health. You know, if you have nice teeth, then in theory, you're healthy. So that's what we're looking at overall. It is a scary title because it does automatically dehumanize Agnes in a lot of ways. And we see that throughout this entire episode where there's moments where she's like being celebrated as this person, right? In theory, right? But it's almost like she's being celebrated as, to not use a handmaid's word, but like a vessel, right? Like suddenly she's useful now, right? In this way that has a lot of people having a lot of reactions about this.
So like Paula's is both excitement that she's going to get her house with her commander and no kid in the pretty near future, right?
Yes. I mean, yes, I do think that's a layer to Paula.
But there's also the element that she knows what she's going to go through, the horse auction, if you will, that she knows isn't a super nice process.
And even I think womanhood in general, like what it means to have been a girl in Gilead is very different than what it means to be a woman in Gilead. And so, you know, the idea of like you're no longer going to be a child that gets to learn and be educated and be amongst your peers. Now you're going to be much more isolated. I would say that Paula at least seems to have been able to keep up her hobby of like horseback riding and that type of thing, which is a little bit hopeful to me that maybe over the years, you know, the wives are able to do more. Because when we saw like Serena and the other wives in Handmaids, they were not doing a lot of other things. You know, they were wifing, and that's about it, right? I mean, there wasn't a lot for them to do. So it was kind of hopeful that I saw Paula like horseback riding. Like I was like, okay, she's at least allowed to do that. You know, like there was something about that felt like, okay, that's great. Now, here's the thing about horseback riding that I think we all know. Like, this is one of the sports that men are cool with women doing, even in these like very oppressed societies. We saw, you know who I'm looking at? I'm looking at Betty Draper, like from Mad Men. Like, she was allowed to horseback ride. Why?
I don't know.
Are you kidding me? You really don't know? Tightens up your thighs, tightens up your butt. Like this is like a sexual thing.
Okay.
Come on, think about it. Just like think about it. Like it's a whole thing, right? It's a whole thing. So even in like the 1950s, when Betty Draper wouldn't be allowed to do anything else, wouldn't be able to participate in much else, she's allowed to horseback ride, right? That's like cool. That's all right.
Okay.
So I know that's a lot of like, we're inferring a lot of things here that are not being said outright, but everything kind of goes back to sex and control and oppression in Gilead. There's a lot going on here that falls under all those. How did you feel about the fact that this becomes very public news very, very, very quickly?
On the one hand, I understand, because their society has built so much around protecting girls while they're still sort of the potential future, and then shepherding them forward into carrying the future, if at all possible. Remember, this is a world that has a lot of infertility, and it's not really outlined so much in the previous show. It happens once or twice, but it is in the book that even if you come to term, your baby might not actually make it. So there's that horror also.
I think that part of the reason why it is public is because it is a victory for their society to be able to say, look, not only are we raising healthy children who are coming of age, and now let's also celebrate that we have addressed the fertility issue that the rest of the world is facing. And now this person is now able to increase our population in our society. So in a lot of ways, you can see why this is looked at as like a huge celebration and a huge victory for their system.
But on the other hand, it stands in kind of like a stark contrast to our society, where it's a private thing that handled within the family. And
again, we're just speaking like Western world, because it's not necessarily true everywhere. And not only that, but there are such things as period parties. That's a thing. People have period cakes. People have celebrations. Like, it kind of depends on what your own family does. For the most part, I think it's probably pretty private for most people. But, you know, some families are very open and very celebratory about it, and very much like this is a whole new step in your life. And it doesn't need to be secretive, I guess, as much as like, you know, this is exciting. Like, you're growing up, and that's great. I mean, growing up in Gilead means a lot of scary things. So I think that was constantly like a cloud over this entire thing. How did you feel about things like the bell ringing and the ants gathering and the girls and all the yelling and the little girls coming over the balcony, and she has to walk across this like flower garden?
It's like they're trying to mask the horse trader portion with sort of this, isn't it all magical, and we're celebrating you, and everyone's crowding around and wishing you well, and there's even like a secret ceremony where you become part of the club. I don't know, it's maybe it's meant to lift your spirits if the other side of the equation is getting you down. Like, it's designed to balance out.
If you can take the society in two chunks, like the before and the after, I think that the before portion, like, you are graduating and they are successful. Like, the ants have kept you safe and healthy, and your families have kept you safe and healthy. So again, like, this is an exciting victory for them that they did do this. Now, I do want to point out, because just a visual for you guys, when they were calling all the girls out to come out and celebrate, there was a part where there was a painting class, and one of the girls puts a paintbrush with red paint into a jar of water, and the water clouds up with the red paint. I honestly thought, when there was that moment when Paula's like, you know, the ants are going to do their check, I thought that late night ceremony with Aunt Lydia and that whole pool thing, somehow, because of that visual, I thought somehow she was going to have to like hang out in that pool in some way until like some indicator that there was like blood in the water was like part of it. I had no idea how that would actually happen. I mean, I don't know about everybody's periods out there, but for the most part, I think early periods are pretty light and not that much. And that would be difficult. But there was something about that visual with that glass and the water and the paint and everything that made me be like, is this the ants check? And if it's not, now I'm freaking out about what the ants check is. Like, did we not get the ants check in this freaking episode?
We didn't.
Oh, great.
And we might not.
I hope we do not.
I think your imagination can probably run to exactly the kind of thing that the ants do to perform their check.
The whole late night ceremony, I also thought it was like, it had so many strange factors to it. So the whole getting her out of bed and everything, I thought was needlessly rough and aggressive. I thought her actually going into the pool area and all of them having their faces covered and being so like ghoulish about it. And then the really wildly violent, aggressive, like baptism kind of part.
Yeah.
And like
the second dunking.
It was like almost like drowning her. What in the world was going on?
I mean, I wish I had a good interpretation of that.
Listeners, if you guys have an idea about what you think was going on there, why do you think it was so aggressive? Why was it so violent? I mean, we'd love to hear your interpretation of it. I was relieved when the cloaked figures took their face masks down and it was just the other girls and it wasn't this super ghouly, you know, I don't know what, like tormentors of some sort. Like, I really didn't know where we were going with this because they had their faces covered. Like, I didn't know what we were doing here. So I was actually very relieved at what the ceremony ended up being like. Let's talk about Becca for a second, though, because this was a chance when we got right in her face. And her faces that she made were all over the place. I mean, she was giving like anger. She was like squinting her eyes at parts. She was like setting her jaw at parts. Then other parts she would sort of like smile and be like more warm. What do you think about this?
I think Becca's feeling a lot of different things. Like we were mentioning with Agnes, having some conflict internally of how to feel for her own self. Becca, being a little further down the path, is now excited to have her friend on the same path as her, but she's been privy to the horse trading longer. But she hasn't really shared that part. She just calls it like dress fittings and stuff like that.
Ooh, wait a minute. Are dress fittings euphemisms?
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, if you think about it, in their world, getting a new dress, it's kind of a big deal because they get one outfit.
No, it is a big deal. But wait.
And she's not excited about dress fittings.
Right. I had not put that together, that maybe that was something else was going on at these dress fittings. Like maybe it was some sort of speed dating kind of something where like she was having to meet commanders or something. Like, I didn't think about that. But gosh, guys, listeners, if you guys are sitting there thinking like, oh God, I mean, I literally thought she was going to a dress fitting. But when she said I have another dress fitting and that's why she couldn't get together and like have some fun with Agnes, you're right. Like it was definitely, there was a sadness there and like a ugh that, I mean, dress fittings. Yeah, I hear what you're saying that, yeah, they could be fun, but like, also, you know, people are like pulling at you and tugging at you and you're like half dressed and I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you've ever had like pants taken in or something and they're like touching you and you're, you know.
A couple times, yeah.
Yeah, and you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Like there's sort of like, it's a little uncomfortable.
There's
and
this move where they
weird.
grab the front of your pants next to your crotch and kind of yank it up a little bit. It's like, that's a close area, Joe.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like, so, I mean, I was literally going with that, but now what you're saying that, I'm wondering, oh God, is dress fittings actually like matchmaking or something even weirder than that?
We're going to get to the dentist in a little bit, but seeing how the dentist behaved, I wonder if dress fitting is like with Martha's and Ants or is it with like a tailor?
Huh. Okay. Well, before we get to the dentist, let's talk about her having to come in and tell her dad. Because when Paula says, oh, your dad's just like in the living room, did anybody think there was going to be an entire room full of men in there?
No, I didn't. Because we've seen them have meetings, with Fred. They went to the meeting room.
With the doors closed.
In the headquarters, sure. It wasn't.
Doors closed. Always doors closed.
Yes, because they don't want anybody to overhear them.
I mean, I think that they're also smoking. They're also like breaking their own rules, right? They're drinking, they're smoking, they're doing like lots of stuff that I feel like it is like it's their time to like let loose and do whatever behind closed doors, and break all their own rules. Okay, that entire part though, like when she has to first of all kneel down in front of her dad, gross, and then do this whole
Right, Rachel and Leah
speech and everything. And we heard that speech over and over again. I mean, that was the way you obviously tell your what's going on here. But the camera work in that room, going around and looking at the different commanders' like physical responses, the sort of like she goes and he like the guy like unfolds, like uncrosses his legs. And then the guy is like sort of stroking his pen. And this other one is like touching his lips and all this. It was really, really gross. Like the hair went up on the back of my neck. Like it was appalling and so sick. And like, again, in that sort of like Paula's like sort of a traitor against women, like in a lot of ways. Like, why did you do this to her? Like, why did you send her in there? Why did you do this? If this is like women should be passing on wisdom to women, why did you send her into that giant room? I mean, those commanders were going home at some point. Why couldn't she have talked to her dad then? It felt like a complete setup by Paula.
Mm-hmm. It seemed like everybody in the room already knew the leering and kind of the body language.
Yeah, like touching their legs and it was the camera. I mean, the camera was taking you around and trying to show you where your eye was supposed to land. And it was all in these weird, gross moves that they were doing.
It's weird. You're right. Because the camera could follow the daughter entering her father's parlor and show the same men. But if they had looks of, say, pride or happiness,
if they clapped, or if they were like, huzzah, like a healthy woman, has entered our world. Hooray. Wonderful news, Commander. Like having a baby or something, like the same move that you would do if you had a baby, patting him on the back, all right, great for your family. Good news. But no, it wasn't like that.
No. The actors did a great job of looking gross.
They super did. So speaking of gross, move on to our dental visit. There were some parts about this that I really did not understand. When Paula's like, we need to whiten your teeth. Okay. Again, going back to this whole like society and having this idea of like homeopathic or very natural products and all this kind of stuff. I'm sure there are natural like teeth whitening products, but something about it just didn't sit right with me. Like it felt immediately overly vain and like odd, right? Mm-hmm. I understand though that it's like we're like polishing her up for sale. Like I get what we're doing.
Yeah.
But I don't know why I was so between that and the x-rays that the dentist did, just the fact, we're going to get into the actual x-ray, but just the idea of using x-ray technology. I know they used ultrasounds and handmaids. I know that they had medical intervention in different ways, but radiation in particular really bothered me because of what you were saying about the colonies and that they were like this radiated land and unusable, and everybody understood that was like toxic and bad for you. I understand she had the lead-lined, apron on, but at the same time, if we understood what caused fertility issues, then we would have already like cured it at this point, right? So like it seems like they would have taken every precaution possible to not introduce something that was a known carcinogenic, a known like toxic thing, especially to somebody who is like young and like, again, we're like celebrating her health and everything. And it also seemed like extra steps in terms of like, maybe the Gilead Society had moved on so far, but I remember it being like a really big deal when they were going to the doctor. Like it was a big dramatic deal. And the idea of having like ongoing dental care where you would be like doing like preventative x-rays and stuff like that felt like a step too far in terms of medical intervention. Like their society seemed like they would have been very reactive to different things and preventative in the way of like, not having additives in your food or preservatives and having their own gardens and doing all the things we saw them doing in handmaids. It felt like x-rays? Why?
If I go back to handmaids and I think of the times that we actually saw doctors, there was one in the first season who was there to check June's condition to make sure she's ready to bear children. Then there was like the trauma type doctors for Janine.
Right.
But other than that, did doctors really step in with, I mean, even during the births, unless it got to an emergency state, then a doctor didn't show up.
Well, hospitals and the concept of intervention in general, like everything was supposed to be natural. That's what the whole, like, your body knows what to do and all this kind of stuff. Like, there was a real emphasis on that. So,
well, even June with the lady doctor, I'll just say, that had a very 1950s kind of feel to it, like old timey, low tech.
What's a lady doctor?
Well, it was a man actually, but that was his function. He was a gynecologist, I believe.
You're calling her a lady? You're calling him a lady doctor?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. I think we can say gynecologist. I don't think we have to say that.
All right. If you insist.
Jeez, that threw me. I was like, she went to a lady doctor? Why are you calling it that? Okay. So I don't know. I'm just putting that out there that was a confusing element for me. Both the teeth whitening, because I would have thought like that level of vanity would have been, I don't know, like in this highly religious society, it seems like that would have been really frowned upon. That would have been like putting on airs or something, like remember we talked about in episode 1, like there wasn't a lot of jewelry and there wasn't a lot of like you couldn't wear your hair down because that was like your whole crown and all this stuff.
There's something almost Amish about them. They're not, because they drive cars and
Right.
they use technology whenever they feel it's appropriate. But in terms of like their dress and stuff,
Very modest.
like the men all wear the same suit, the women all wear the same dress. Like if you think of like what is it, Amish that don't have buttons, because buttons are an expression of vanity, right? And so,
or
like,
yeah,
like even the women's dresses don't really have bows and embellishments and things.
True.
You know.
So yeah, so you get what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
and we talked about like that. I actually liked that they had more natural makeup and hair and stuff like that. It wasn't like elaborate. It wasn't contoured. It wasn't like all this stuff. Like they tended to have like a more natural, childlike look. And there was something about the teeth whitening and the X-rays and everything that just, I don't know, rubbed me the wrong way. Again, maybe we're seeing the hypocrisy of this society and that it has only gotten like so much worse in terms of like we say these things, but then we're over here whitening your teeth and doing X-rays. So take it with a grain of salt when we say we're like natural and all this kind of stuff. It all was wild. We found out that the dentist is Becca's dad, and they had that conversation about Becca and the fact that Becca's a warrior and all those things. I didn't know what to make of Becca's dad, even at that part. He seemed like he was saying too much, sharing too much, talking too much about his kid to another kid. That all felt like immediately like, what's with this guy? Something's weird about him.
I mean, he exposes why he's weird. It's like he's using the friendliness as a way to get in close, right?
Yes. Now, I mean, the way that Paul and I are taking this entire scene is that it was a true sexual assault. And while it was somewhat subtle, somewhat vague in what exactly was going on there, the camera wasn't like directly on every body part and everything. I mean, we can all agree that she was obviously made to feel uncomfortable. That part when he's like, your breast must be tender. I mean, what, dude? Like, but also I can't figure out, because of the public nature of all this stuff, like everybody seems to be able to talk about how your body's feeling and everything. Like Shunammite's like, oh, don't my boobs look bigger? And like, and I'm like also sore. And like, I don't know. There was this weird, like above board conversation about stuff that I can't decide, like, until the touching obviously upset Agnes beyond belief. And I completely understand that. I couldn't even know if the talk was enough to be like, you're totally being out of line and inappropriate to us 100%. But like in their world, was that being inappropriate? Because I mean, what did we just see in the commander's meeting and everything?
Well, I guess maybe the context of the school lunchroom and girls in a girls' school talking about girl things, boob size and whatnot. That's one thing.
Right.
Whereas if, say, Agnes's commander dad was in the room there with them, would the dentist have been so free with his breast-related comments?
I wonder, because, I mean, the commanders in the room were doing their thing. They were stroking pens and licking lips and being weird. It's a good question. Like, would her father have been like, knock it off. Would he have defended her? Or is that relationship like not even there in terms of being like a protector, because you don't look at it like that? Like, it's like, no, she is up for auction, everybody. Like, go ahead, lick your lips and everybody make comments. Like, we're all cool with this. That's what I'm trying to judge. Where was the line? Did he cross the line when he was talking about it? When did he cross the line in their society? I know where it was in ours, but I don't know where it was in theirs exactly. I don't know if it matters, but for me, it felt like, I mean, again, like every hair on my body was like standing straight up for the whole thing.
I think we need to keep our eye on that character. I don't know how much more he's going to play into the plot with Agnes and stuff. I think he was meant to symbolize men in general, now looking at her differently than they did the last time they saw her.
That's totally fair. And also, I mean, obviously, we have this sort of flash forward. I don't know if I can't decide if it's totally a dream or if there's some memory element to it, or I don't know exactly how.
The voiceover makes it confusing.
It does, about these nightmares that this triggers her into having these nightmares about her wedding night and about this faceless commander. And she's obviously like very upset and in this bed and all this stuff. So the way the voiceover said it, I couldn't figure out if it was a memory of her wedding night or if it was a nightmare foreshadowing what she was imagining and having nightmares about her wedding night.
I'll tell you how I took it. I took it that the way she described it was that was the first time I had this nightmare. That has recurred several times since then. And we know, or we suspect anyway, that the voiceover version of Agnes has gone through whatever it is that this show is going to put her through, right?
Okay. And
so she has kept having this nightmare all that time, however long that is. Yeah, I think that's it. I don't think she's gotten married. I think it's just the way that things are shaping up for her, the way that things just shifted overnight is, I think, going to scare the bejesus out of her, actually.
I think so too. I think the conversation that she had with Becca after the ceremony, the aunts, and Becca challenges her about how excited that Agnes is. And, Agnes says, we get to leave all this behind. And Becca questions her and is like, what would you want to leave behind? Like, what is it that you think that is like going on here that you think is going to be better on the other side of this? And I thought that was a wise question that Becca was asking, and something that I think as the watchers we're supposed to be asking, like, well, what is exactly, especially if you guys haven't watched Handmaids, I don't know what you're doing if you haven't, but if you haven't, what is on the other side of this journey for them? I thought it was very sweet, but also very childlike to be like, we're going to be pushing our strollers next to each other and all those things. Like, that is very cute, but that is definitely something a child best friend talks about. It's a very youthful, hopeful idea. Did you think that part of the reason why maybe the ceremony was done in private and with those cloaks and all that kind of stuff, do you think that is foreshadowing or giving this element of like, you're a part of a secret society now and we don't talk about what really happens on the other side of this journey? Like, it is a secret?
I like that idea. That actually makes kind of a lot of sense, is that we don't tell
don't talk about
the younger
Fight Club,
girls
right?
about this stuff. And that would explain a lot why Becca was so cagey with her answers before, because they were asking her stuff and she would just give like 1 or 2 word answers and just kind of duck into the back of the line so that they moved on to talk to whatever Shunammite wanted to talk about.
Right. We're going to move on from this subject because I definitely feel like there was a lot here and it was very upsetting. But there was this whole other storyline with Daisy that was going on that had a lot of head scratching moments. Mm-hmm. What in the world motivated Daisy to give this big confessional? What was going on?
I think we need to talk about it because I can't figure it out. They had this little trust bond there, the kinds of things that budding friendships even build on sometimes, as if they're sharing a secret, right? And it's not a big one. Maybe to them it is huge, but to us, blasphemy is not.
I know the confession is blasphemy, but really it's the entire reaction that she had, right? I mean, that's really their secret thing, is that
right? Yes,
is that she had this huge reaction and she was reacting so badly and obviously wasn't buying into the whole thing. But
the crime was blasphemy.
That's what she admits to.
Right, yeah.
Right. I sort of wondered if, especially after the pointing and the yelling and the screaming, and how she then points her finger back at Agnes and said, well, she knew about it. I kind of wondered if we were playing some game of like trauma bonding. You sort of gave me the cold shoulder when you came in at school, and I was supposed to be sticking with you, but you like took off up the stairs and said like, well, you can't come with me. And you didn't tell me why, and you just acted like that. And so now I'm going to do something that forces us to have this like punishment together. And like, as messed up as that thinking is, and it absolutely is, it is like this weird revenge bonding in some messed up way. Like, now we both went through this, and now we're standing shoulder to shoulder, both brushing our teeth with this nasty stuff. There's something about that to me that, like, when she thought she was going to be left alone, I mean, that was like, that's it. I'm turning on my heel and I'm immediately going to go implicate you in this crime with me.
Here's a possible nuance.
Okay.
What if Daisy is there to stick onto Agnes like glue?
Okay.
What if the facade that she is carrying is meant to mask her mission? I'm
Which
just proposing.
We can see she has a mission.
But what if that mission is Agnes, right?
Okay.
Maybe she doesn't know anything about why. She just knows that's who I need to stick to. So, if they're starting to punish me like crazy, I don't know where this is going. If I rat her out, at least I'll be able to fulfill what I'm supposed to be doing, which is staying close to her.
Okay. I mean, I think we were both saying the same thing. I think when I said like some sort of revenge trauma bonding, like, I think we're getting to the same end point, right? Like, we're both shoulder to shoulder at this sink.
Yeah.
Brushing our teeth with this stuff.
Just possibly different motivations, but still pretty close, not very far off.
Does that explain the initial confession?
No.
Unless she was always intending to point a finger at Agnes. But that at least in her reasoning, that wasn't her reasoning. Her reasoning was, well, you so got into my face. I just had to get like pissed at you because you were just like totally in my face screaming dirty girl and being like the worst of the ringleaders, that like I had to take you down a notch.
With Agnes, we are treated to, I guess, a girl's perspective. It's not like we're watching a CW show where it's a teenager, but for all intents and purposes, they walk and they talk and they drink like adults, Right. Now, Daisy, we've only seen do a few things kind of independently, right? So is it fair to assume that she also has a teenage, inexperienced, not wise, beyond her years brain?
Partially, but God, wouldn't you think that like after seeing that guy's hand be cut off, or didn't she make some sort of snide remark about like, well, at least they didn't cut our tongues out?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if you're aware of the depth that this punishment could go, like, whoa, that you would even open the door to being punished.
That's what I was about to say. Like, even if you were trying to gain a little clout, kind of like the reverse way, if you can't do it by just good deeds, well, what if you do it through this bad deed, but you're doing it the right way within their society, right? You're turning yourself in.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
So they get the idea that you are taking this conversion seriously because you're willing to take consequences for an action that was highly optional.
Okay. I mean, we definitely all agree. I mean, let's just lay out the couple of extra information that we have about Daisy now. So last one, we saw her that she had the little radio, right? Some sort of little transistor or something going on there. This time, she's in the bathroom drawing some sort of schematic, right? With these, with this matchsticks. I'm not sure. What do you think she's drawing? Is she drawing the school? Yeah,
I think she's drawing the school.
Okay, so she's drawing the school. She's got like these little matchsticks. Obviously, then we see her. I was actually kind of confused by the fact that she like took her legs up in the bathroom. I couldn't quite understand why she didn't, and maybe this goes to your teenage brain, part where it's like you have to be somewhere. And if you're not in your bed and you hide that you're in the bathroom, where the hell do you think the ants think you are? And like, you need to be somewhere, like, meaning like she should have flushed the toilet or whatever, you know, and acted like, yeah, I'm in here. I'm not in my bed where you obviously just looked. I'm in here using the bathroom, right? So I was a little like, ooh, was that like a misstep on her part? Like, I thought she was going to get snatched up again, like right away, because again, if you're not in your bed and you're not in the bathroom, what the hell? You know, like, where are you?
Well, that's a good question, because we know that at least she was awake. Mm-hmm. We know that someone with a flashlight was there that we can assume was an ant, because...
I have to assume it is.
But maybe not Vidala, because I feel like she's the kind that would kick in every stall door before she left the room.
I kind of would have. If I'm in charge of these girls and they're not in their bed, and there's like, I assume there's like outer doors to that room, and the only access they have is the bathroom, why are you not kicking the doors in? Mm-hmm. You know, like, I'm actually quite surprised that the search for her ended.
Maybe her teenage brain didn't know what to do with the map and the other stuff that she had.
Agreed.
I mean, obviously you would flush it.
Not the plate or whatever the freaking thing was on. The matchsticks were on.
That's true.
I'm with you on the flushing the matchsticks and stuff. Smart, normal, whatever. But the plate thing she had it on? I was thinking the same thing. Like, why do you have this plate? Why do you have anything with you that you couldn't like put in your mouth or something? Like, how do you have all this extra stuff with you? This seems unwise right away. But I guess, you know, to your point of it not being a CW show and like teenagers are going to make mistakes and are going to fumble, they're not going to think it through totally. This is what we're seeing with her. Now, oh my God.
We do know that Lydia does bed check too.
I feel like anybody and everybody could be doing bed check, like, in all honesty, like anybody, a guardian, anybody. I don't know who else. But we've seen that kind of bed check move done before. And it's like, oh, man, it was giving me the heebie-jeebies right away. Okay, when she starts fooling around with the bed, did you think it was her own bed?
I did.
Okay, same. Second, what the fuck is she doing? Putting this contraband in someone else's bed. I don't think these girls were working together in any form or fashion, because that other girl's face being awake obviously freaked Daisy out, and she was like panting then, which was like, oh Lord, like, way to be cool, girl, because like, this is not going well. What the fuck with all that? How did she prepare this bed with like a false wall that she could be hiding supplies in, unless there's other people besides Daisy that are doing something more here? There
may be collusion.
And maybe it's not that girl. I don't know.
That girl, I think, just has had her bed jiggled every night for the last week and is like, hey, I see you.
Yeah, I agree. That was the look in her face, was like, I'm staring right at you. I'm staring right at you jiggling my bed.
I don't want to know what you're doing, but I know you're doing something.
Right.
You know?
That's how I took it. That is how I took it. But do we think that the fact that that bed was obviously manipulated in some way, does that indicate to us there's other people, whether Daisy knows who those other people are, or whether there's just like, sort of like, you know, how we had Martha's in other households that were also doing things in handmaids and stuff, like, you know?
I think it does, because she would have needed time alone and with tools, unless it was already jimmied open. You know what I mean? Like that's a whole little wooden panel there that you would need like a little screwdriver or something to, like, you know, pry off of there.
Something.
And
going back to your Amish comment, I feel like a lot of this stuff is like sturdy. Like, you know, like in our brains, you might think like, oh, I don't know, if it was like an IKEA bed or some like plywoody kind of MDF or something, you pull that up. But that's like not the world they live in. They live in like somebody would have solidly made these beds, right?
I agree.
So then in that case, like, how did you even jiggle that thing off?
It's like,
unless there was like either a wave before you of Pearl Girls where somebody else laid some little nuggets down for you, like little breadcrumbs for you to be able to have little hidey holes and stuff. Like, it implies a bigger thing, right? Beyond. Yeah. And I mean, we know obviously she's got the transistor radio. Like, we know she's got supplies. Where could she have gotten those supplies from? right?
Yeah.
So, and how does she have this bowl of matches and all this stuff? Like, I need to have like a Daisy centric episode where we are like busily figuring out how she gathers these supplies and like where is she getting stuff from. And I don't know. I know it's weird, but even it was bugging me when she was scritching and she kind of like brushed the ash onto the floor. That bothered me because that is the kind of weird crap that like an Aunt Lydia or one of the other ants, you know, they're walking and like their foot touches something and it crunches. And they do that kind of like, kind of face where you're like, what could possibly have been in here that would possibly make that sound? Like every little part, I'm so freaked out by Gilead that I feel like at any time somebody could rat you out and figure out some way to punish you in some new and a horrible way.
Do you want a little color from the book?
Sure.
All right. So ballpoint pens are a luxury. They are a rarity because they do not have a direct supply line to someplace that makes them. So if they get them, they are special or black market, right? So if they're black market, then maybe the ants figured out a way to get them without anybody noticing. But if they're official, then they're not going to the ants. They're going to commanders because they have told the ants that they can use like quill and ink basically for their writing, going back to our low-tech Amish approach to doing things. And knowing that only the ants amongst women are the only ones allowed to read and write, then there would be no reason for pens, pencils, or anything like that to be available at their school openly.
That makes sense. That's good. That's good texture to understand. Like, why would she be using the head of matches to be doing this type of stuff? I think you could also kind of go with like, I believe we had some sort of fire starter kind of imagery in Handmaids. The idea of striking a match and starting a fire. The idea of using a match head to draw something that was going to burn it all down.
Well, Fred's first house did burn down, didn't it?
I think there's something there, right? Using a match to burn it all down by drawing a picture with it, essentially.
Good symbolism.
Like, I think that was excellent. Any predictions? Anything you want to see in the next episode? Anything that you're like, I really hope. Oh, wait, I do have to ask you one more questions before predictions, actually.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. That part where Agnes gets out of the car and the Guardian's smoking and she's all like, you know, you shouldn't be smoking. What percentage of you thought she was going to go squeal on that guy?
0.
No, really?
She didn't squeal on Daisy.
Yeah, but didn't you think that there was sort of this like, she had a little bit of haughtiness when she got out as like, now I'm the newfound woman after her ringing the bell and everything and everybody applauding her all day long. You didn't think she was like kind of like hot talker day? Like,
I thought the hot talk was mostly flirtatiousness because this guy was close enough to her age that it wasn't like as gross as what she was about to have to go through with the commanders.
Right. I worried there for a second. I thought, oh no, is she going to try to pull some sort of like points with Paula by like tattling on this guy or doing something? Because, you know, other people can see, you know, there's probably Martha's or Paula, for God's sake, peeping out the window that she pulled up, you know, and 2 seconds later, it's like, I saw you talking to him, you know, like, what did you say?
Going back to your prediction question, I don't see Agnes going that way. I see the next episode or the next few episodes having to do with the prospect of becoming married and whether or not she can deal with that. Diving deeper into what I've been calling the horse trade, but you can think of another term if you'd like, but that aspect of the next phase of her life.
Right. I completely agree. I want to find out more about Daisy because I feel like she is the hope of the story right now. And there is something there about like sort of undoing this system. And we know it's going to come partially from her, obviously, what she's doing. I always dug all the antics in Handmaids whenever there was like clever ways to get around the system. Those were my favorite episodes when we would see little things that they had done or figured out. And it was like, oh, cool. They have a trap door. They have like a whatever they figured out, a false wall or whatever it was. It always made me feel like hopeful and like, okay, there's these like smart individuals who are willing to fight back. And that always felt good, right? So that's what I'm hoping to see in the next episode. This is Caroline.
And this is Paul. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast if you like this episode, because there will be many more. You can do that on iTunes or Spotify or Amazon or several other places. If you do find it and you do like it, please leave us a review and a 5-star rating so other people will be able to find the podcast in the future. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much for listening.
Pod Clubhouse.